I don't know about you, but the first thing I saw this morning when I went online was the Stephen West mystery knit-along sort of yarn requirements reveal. I was a little disappointed, I have to say. But we'll get into that. But it threw the whole rest of my morning off in terms of what I thought I was going to be doing, which was going to be getting ready to film this, and I went into planning mode for the MKAL. So we're going to talk about that as well as other knit-alongs and a bunch of other stuff. So let's do this. Welcome everyone to GaryKnitsAndRides, a Craftivism podcast. My name is Gary, and I'm a knitter and a crocheter. I'm also a cyclist in AIDS Lifecycle, which is a 545-mile, 7-day bike ride from San Francisco to LA each June that raises money for the life-saving work of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. This will be the 5th year that I'm doing the ride, and as part of my fundraising, I have a couple projects. One are the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. We do 4 of those each year. And this year I also started D-Stash for Good, which is an online fiber auction to help you find new loving homes for your skeins of yarn that you no longer need or want. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. Those are sort of the two main focuses of the craftivism part of this podcast for the time being, but each episode I'm also going to try to highlight a couple of other opportunities for you to join your crafting and doing good in the world. So we'll get into some of that as well. But welcome to episode number 2. I hope you've watched episode number 1, and welcome back if you did that. And I hope that you will continue to watch, to like, and to subscribe, and leave comments down below. You can find me on Instagram at GaryKnitsAndRides with underscores, and on Ravelry at GaryKnitsAndRides. Sorry, GaryKnitsAndRides. Ravelry, we also have a group for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. The links to all of that and to everything else I'm going to talk about today will be in the show notes below. So let's get into it. What has been going on? It has been crazy busy as summer has kind of drawn to a close. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in Southern California, where I am coming from, which is where I live with my husband and 2 dogs, Kabiria and Julieta, who you may hear barking at some point because they're poorly behaved. And yeah, so we're in the middle of a heat wave, and it's been very hot the last couple of days. I think we're supposed to hit a record for the planet in Death Valley of like 125 degrees sometime this week, which is bonkers. But we've been blessed with a relatively mild summer so far, so I'm not going to complain too much about a few days where we get into the 90s or up to 100 around here. But yeah, it's going fast and furious as we head towards Labor Day, and then we're heading off on our first vacation since the pandemic, which is going to be exciting. But we've had a busy couple of weeks. So we went to the Hollywood Bowl last week, which is one of the things that we enjoy doing during the summer, and we got to see Miss Diana Ross, which was fantastic. I kind of had low expectations because I had heard people who have seen her probably in the last 6 or 7 years and said it was sort of hit or miss, but I thought she put on a great, very tight, very quick kind of greatest hit shows, but I thought it was great. She sounded good. She's 78 years old, which is amazing. She's been performing since she was 16. As I said, it was pretty much a greatest hit show. She has a new album out called Thank You, and she did a couple numbers from that, but the crowd didn't really know those songs as much. But for the rest of the show, everyone was up and dancing, and she did a Billie Holiday song as sort of her, nod to Lady Sings the Blues, and covered most of the songs that we know. So it was a really fun fun evening. We have one more show one more show that we're going to get to see. We actually are missing two of the shows that we have subscription for because we'll be on vacation. So we're going to go see Duran Duran, which I'm going to talk about in a minute with one of my whips. We also celebrated my mom's birthday, which is fun, since they live nearby, and so we were able to get together with them and have some Mexican food, which was awesome. The other thing that took a fair amount of my time over the past couple weeks was the Treehouse Knits Stranger Things collection launch. It was a launch and a close really, really quickly. If you don't know Lauren from Treehouse Knits, she does amazing work. I'm going to show some of her yarn in a little bit, but she put together a fabulous collection based around the Stranger Things TV show, and she was launching the pre-order of that sometime last week. And so I put together several projects because I'm really trying to focus on only buying yarn if I have a project set aside for it, which doesn't really limit it as much as you would think. It just means picking out a pattern and ahead of time. But I was able to buy some yarn, including a sweater quantity of one of my favorite colors that she's dyed up. And so that is going to be fun when that comes towards the end of the year. So I'll show all that stuff when I get there. But that was a fair amount of fun. I feel like putting together kits, what I call kits for sort of patterns and yarn together, is almost as much fun as knitting them up. I just love kind of thinking about things and planning projects, as my closet attests to, because I have a bunch of Ziploc bags full of yarn that have pattern names inside of them that at some point I'm going to get to making. So that took up a bunch of my time. And then I hit a milestone on Instagram. I hit 4,000 followers, and so each time I hit a new 1,000 followers, I try to do a giveaway. So this time I did a Shop My Stash giveaway, which I'm actually going to be doing over on Instagram Live a little bit later this afternoon with the winner. So Go Forth and Knit was the winner of that giveaway, and so he and I are going to do a live together, and he's going to shop my stash. We talked earlier, so we narrowed it down to fingering weight, which is what I have the most of anyway. And so I'm going to find out what kind of projects he's working on, and he's going to pick out 3 skeins of yarn that I'll send off to him. So it should be fun. It's nice to lay everything out on the guest room bed and kind of see it all. Also worked out pretty well, as we'll talk about in a minute, for the Mr. Make-Along planning process. So I had all that fingering weight yarn all laid out already. So that was fun. And last night I had an amazing evening. My local yarn store, which is Knitting Tree LA, and the wonderful owner Annette had put together an evening with Gregory Stitch, who is a fantastic crochet designer. And every Wednesday night at Knitting Tree LA, they have a potluck dinner thing. So everyone kind of gets together and sort of knits and has some snacks and whatnot. But last night they had Gregory Stitch come in. He was in town for a photo shoot. So he just sort of spoke to, it was a packed house. There probably feels like 35 of us in there. And just talked about his design process, a little bit about his life story. He has a really inspirational story of how he got into crocheting and the journey that led him there. And he is planning the first ever Crochet Fashion Week later this year in Atlanta. So it was exciting to hear about the plans that he had going on. And I was actually also able to, unbeknownst to me, one of my friends who I've met recently, Tracy from Love Petals Crochet, who has a shop down the road here in San Pedro. She was there as well, so we got to hang out and crochet a little bit together and listen to Gregory's story. So that was a really fun evening. So that's what's been going on. We are very close to cast on date for the first End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs of this year, so the fall 2022 edition. So the cast on is going to be September 12th. That will run through November 12th. We have a knitting project and a crocheting project, and there are yarn kits available for both of those. So let's walk through each of them, and let's start with crochet. So the pattern that we're going to be working on for the Crochet Along is the Sweet Shadow Wrap by Leigh Ann Parente. It is going to be released on September 8th for cast on September 12th. So there's only 4 days between release date and cast on. It is being released as part of the Sun and Fog collection, which is, I think, a biannual collection put together by designers from Northern California. So I just got this actually postcard about it. So this is this year's collection. The theme is leaves. And if you look down in the, there you go, that is the Sweet Shadow Wrap. It's in a different colorway than the kit that we are going to be working on, or the kit, I guess that I should say, that was designed for the Crochet Along. But these are the patterns. They're really nice. I'm actually kind of interested in a couple of those. So I think I will probably be buying that when it releases on, so all those come out together on September 8th as a package. Leigh Ann's pattern is also going to be available individually. It's $6.50. I believe the package, at least in the past years, it's been $15. So for the first weekend, so September 8th through the 11th, Leigh Ann is donating 100% of the proceeds of her pattern sale to my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So we definitely want to be grabbing those patterns that first weekend to maximize the benefit. But I will say, even though it doesn't benefit me, if you're interested in the other patterns in that collection, highly recommend you go ahead and get the pattern that way. Even though I'm not benefiting, at least my fundraising is not benefiting from it, but I really feel strongly that we should be supporting indie designers when we can. And it's a great deal if it is $15, even if it's a little bit more than that, for, let me see, 9 patterns in that collection. That is a heck of a deal. So if you want to get those patterns and you want to get the pattern for the Sweet Shadow Wrap that way, by all means, definitely do it that way. If the spirit moves you and you want to throw a few bucks into my coffee page tip jar for the fundraising aspect, that's great. But feel free to join us in the Crochet Along if you buy your pattern that way as well. I'm not going to be policing that, but I think it's a great way to support designers. So Ava, I'm sorry, I keep saying Ava from Seismic Yarn has put together several kits for the Sweet Shadow Wrap. I should mention that it is designed as a 5-color fingering weight crochet wrap, fingering weight held double. So it creates a fade through the pattern. I'll put a picture of it up here so you can see a little more detail, and that's in the colorway that Ava has put together for the kit. But she's put together the AIDS Lifecycle kit, which is $150. So each of the skeins is $30, and $18 of each kit sold will go to AIDS Lifecycle. So the 5 colors that are in the wrap, I have to look down because I always miss one of them. Citrine, so it starts kind of from gold and goes through a really dark purple. So Citrine, and then Daydream, then Mother Must Go Now, Dracula's Cape, and Dark Tanzanite. And those 5 colors, you hold them together and then you marl them throughout to create the fade. But she's also, if you click through the page, and that's going to be linked down below, you'll see that she's put together some other colorways as well, if the gold to sort of purple fade is not your cup of tea. So please go check those out. And it's probably a little bit late to order your yarn and get it in time for cast on, but don't panic. I make the Knitalongs 2 months long so that people don't feel like there's this rush to get things done. And Leigh Ann has said when we had our conversation on Instagram Live that the pattern works up really, really quickly. So you're effectively working at a DK gauge. It uses, I want to say a J hook, but don't quote me on that. It is in the show notes, so check there. So she says it works up really quickly, which I am counting on because I have so many whips that I'm trying to get done, and it's going to come with me on vacation, I think. So I'm hoping to make a fair amount of project on the plane rides and the driving that we have planned for the vacation. So don't panic. That's the message, is don't panic if you don't have your yarn ready to go right at cast on date for the wrap. So please go to Seismic Yarn to check out the kits for the Crochet Along. Please stay tuned for the link to purchase the pattern from Leigh Ann when that releases on September 8th. I will be promoting it on Instagram, so you will not miss it. I will go back into show notes after the 8th when I have that link, and I will edit them so that the link is there for everyone to see. It will also be in the link tree in my bio on Instagram, so you can find all the stuff, all the links to all the patterns, all the yarn kits will be in that in link tree in my Instagram bio. So that's the Crochet Along. For the Knit Along, we have patterns by Disturbing the Fleece. So Fatima Hines of Disturbing the Fleece online and the Fleece Flock. If you are one of her Instagram followers, you know that she does these video learning lives on Wednesdays, and she has dubbed her followers the Fleece Flock. So she has put together a bundle for a hat and cowl. It's a cabled hat and cowl. This is the hat. I made it as a sample when we first announced the Knitalongs with Fatima, and it is called the It's Winter Somewhere hat and cowl set. You can buy the pattern separately, or she has put together a special price for the bundle. So they're $11 a piece if you buy them separately, $20 for the bundle. The bundle pricing only is good until cast on date, so only good until September 12th. So if you're interested in joining the Knitalong, you for sure want to get the patterns before we cast on. So Fatima teamed up with Ross from Twisted Ambitions Yarn, and he put together 3 kits, 3 different colorways. The color that I worked on for the hat, and I will be doing the cowl at some later point, hopefully before the Knit-Along ends, is Sedona. So it's a very tonal orange. It's pretty true to color on the screen. So it's pretty variegated. It definitely looks more, at least to my eye, it looks more variegated knit up than it does in the skein. Although this one looks pretty variegated actually. So it's pretty true to true color. So a really nice burnt orange, perfect for fall, since we are now fully in, or almost fully into, pumpkin latte season. I've seen Jake of Ken Yarn and Tony from TL Yarn Crafts doing taste tests on the new pumpkin latte things from Starbucks. So fall is coming, and this is a perfect fall color. So this is Sedona. The other colors that he has put together, I only have one of them to show. The turquoise blue is Caribbean. So Caribbean. Less tonal than Sedona. So this is really, I would say, semi-solid. I mean, there is some variation, isn't it, because it is hand-dyed yarn, but definitely more of a semi-solid than the Sedona. And then the final color, which I don't have to show, but I will pop a picture up, is Flamingo, and it is a speckled pink. It is a hot pink, pretty bright pink with darker pink speckles on it. And I've seen a couple of people who have gotten their skeins of Flamingo and started to kick it up. It looks really great in person, and that's one I really can't wait to see knit up into the cables, because I think it's going to be gorgeous with the cables. So there's a hat and a cowl. The motif, the cable motif from the hat is replicated sideways, or the other orientation, on the cowl. It's a fairly generously sized cowl. Based on the pictures I've seen of it, it looks like you could probably do a double wrap on it. It is DK weight. The hat takes 1 skein, the cowl takes 2 skeins. Ross's DK base that he's using is Wicked, I think it's called Wicked DK, is a generous put up, so it's 115 grams, 250 yards. I would say of the 115 grams yarn that I use, the skein that I use, I probably had about 35-40 grams left, so a fair amount left, which I guess you could probably, if you really wanted to make sure you had an extra long cowl, you could throw that into the cowl pattern and make sure that it was extra long. It was a really fun pattern. I'm not a super advanced cabler by any stretch of the imagination, but the pattern really became quick to memorize. Well, memorize, but be familiar with, so I wasn't constantly having to think about what I was doing, and it worked up very, very quickly. Again, DK weight, so it's going to work up quickly. I think this hat took me less than a week of non-monogamous knitting. So that is the It's Winter Somewhere Hat and Cowl from Fatima Hines, aka Disturbing the Fleece. Kits by Ross at Twisted Ambitions Yarn. All the links down below in the show notes. Please go to make sure you get the kit the patterns before cast on day, and it would be helpful to Ross, I'm sure, if you could get your orders in sooner rather than later. I'm going to mention something else about Ross and what he's doing a little bit later. But he's been doing, in addition to supporting me in the AIDS Lifecycle, he just wrapped up a Trevor Project fundraiser with one of his skeins of yarn, and he has a new one coming in September that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So he does great things, and he's just a super great guy. So I appreciate if you go and check out his yarn and maybe get one of the kits. But I should mention, the Crochetalongs and Knitalongs are open to anyone who has the pattern. Stash diving is highly encouraged, and so I love to see what people come up with outside of the kits that have been put together. So feel free to join us if you're going to be working on those projects in your own yarn. You'll still be eligible for all the giveaways. The hashtags for the giveaways will be listed below in the show notes. And you can enter the giveaways by either posting pictures on Instagram, whips and FOs, or posting them in our Ravelry group, which I also have a link to below. There is one other way to play along in the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, and that is the wildcard division. It's something new that we're trying. Given the proliferation of make-alongs and Crochetalongs and Knitalongs in the fall season, I felt like it was an interesting idea to allow people to work maybe on one of those other things, but still participate in the community and the giveaway and the fundraising for the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. So you can enter the wildcard division and work on whatever you'd like to work on, whether that's the Stephen West Make-Along or the Hohi Locatelli Knitalong or the Lacey Crochet Along from Steph Made That in Radical Threads. Anything you want to work on, an old whip, a new whip, anything. So the way you can enter is either buying either of the patterns for the fall End AIDS Knitalongs or Crochetalongs. So either buying Fatima's patterns or Leigh Ann's pattern, and DM me the receipt, because this is one where I am needing to keep track of names. Or you can buy any of the yarn in kits for any of those patterns and work on them in a later date, use them in a different project. Whatever. I'm sort of one of the disappointments with the Stephen West Knitalong is that you couldn't use the seismic yarn kit as it's put together. In the Stephen West shawl, you would need to add some additional yarn, which I'm sure Ava could help you out with if you wanted to buy the kit and then add 2 more skeins to make your Stephen West shawl. But anyway, buy any of the yarns, including, and do I not have it here? I don't know if I have it here. Including the color Mother Must Go Now, which I have a couple of skeins of, but I don't think I have it in here with me. And 20% of those skeins of Mother Must Go Now, which is included in the kit, for the life of that colorway, are going to go to my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising as part of Ava's Compassion collection, which are her fundraising yarns that she uses to fundraise for various projects. So buy Mother Must Go Now, buy a kit from Ava, buy a kit from Ross, DM me those receipts, and you will be entered into the wildcard division. You can work on whatever you want to. The third way you can join the wildcard division is to purchase a wildcard ticket. Go to my Ko-fi page. There's a little golden ticket. You just buy one of those. They're $12, and you'll be entered into the wildcard division. Work on whatever you want to, and you'll be entered into the giveaways. For the giveaways, just use the regular hashtag. So if your wildcard project is knitting, use the Knitalong hashtag. If your wildcard project is crocheting, use the Crochet Along hashtags. And there are going to be separate prizes for the wildcard division. So there'll be 3 buckets of giveaway prizes. One for knitting, one for crocheting, and one for wildcard. So we've got a fair number of people already signed up for the wildcard division, which is really exciting because it was a new idea and I didn't know if people would be into it or not. So that made me feel good. I think we've got about 20 people so far signed up, and hopefully we'll add some more over the next couple weeks. What else on the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs? Every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Time, we do a Zoom call. It is very low-key and casual. It is hosted by Valerie of Creations by Valerie, who has been generous enough to donate her Zoom account for an hour and a half or so on every Tuesday evening. And we just hang out and show what we're working on, talk about other projects we're working on, things we're planning, and it's just a lot of fun to put actual voices and faces with Instagram handles. So join us. Don't even wait for the the cast on to start. We're doing it right now because we just continued throughout the summer, and there's usually 6 or 7 of us that jump on and hang out for a couple hours, but it's very low key and casual. So that's every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Wildcard ticket, talked about that. So let's talk about some other Crochetalongs and Knitalongs. I mentioned a few seconds ago the Lacey Crochet Along, which is starting tomorrow. I'm recording this on the 1st. So I think when I'll put this out, hopefully tomorrow on the 2nd, I think the cast on is on the 2nd, and it is, yes, going to run through the 28th of October. So this is the Lacey Shawl Tunisian Crochet Along. The designer is Steph of Steph Made That, and it is being co-run by the folks at Radical Threads, which is a knitting lifestyle publication. There's recipes, there's articles on gardening, other crafting as well, but there are always some knitting and crocheting patterns in that magazine. So they're running a crochet along for Steph's Lacey shawl. It's a pattern that I've been wanting to make since I saw he and Fatima actually talk about it on one of her lives. And so even though I have no business casting on for another project because I already have more whips than I feel comfortable with, I am going to do it and see if I can keep up. They're doing it in, I think, 2-week increments. They're going to have kind of check-ins and things on a live or a Zoom call. All the information is down below. It's also on the Radical Threads link tree in the Radical Threads Instagram account and on their website. But so it's a 3-color Tunisian crochet shawl. I busted out my TL Yarn Crafts Tunisian crochet handbook the other day, did a little swatching to get myself refamiliarized with the process. So the pattern is worked up in it's 3 colors, kind of a variegated in 2 solids is how Steph has shown it. So that's how I'm planning to do it, and I'm going full autumnal realness. And these are my 3 colors that I've chosen, using some scrap and leftovers from my Stephen West Mystery Knit Along last year. So this rust color was a mini from Zakima. I'll post it below. I always forget the name. Zakima, I think, or Zakima yarns. It was part of a yarn bouquet that was given to me for the holidays last year, and so it's this rust color. And then the other solid is Magpie Fibers Tactical in their singles merino base. This was in my shawlography last year. And then for the main section, this is Feisty Fibers in their Swanky base, which is 100% superfine merino. And the color is Spite, and it's just this really nice grays and rusts and into not quite olives, but I think the olive will work really well with it. So I'm going to cast on for that tomorrow. How far I get in the meantime, I do not know, but that may be also a project that goes with me on vacation. And then the other one that we're going to talk about is the Stephen West mystery Knitalongs. So as I mentioned, it was the first thing I saw when I jumped online this morning, was his video about the color kits that they're selling at Stephen and Penelope and the requirements. And I was a little disappointed because, as expected, it was 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn. I have my fingering weight yarn all laid out on the guest room bed for the Shop My Stash giveaway that I'm going to do with Go Forth and Knit later this afternoon. And I thought, oh, this is, great that he's releasing it now. I can go, kind of pick things out and plan that while everything's all laid out, and I don't have to pack it back up and dig it back out of the bins. But it is 2 skeins of one color, 2 skeins of another color, and then a third, I don't know what he calls it. It's like a color pop. And so it's a main color, a contrasting color, and then a color pop color. And as much fingering weight yarn as I have, and it's quite a bit, I don't have a lot of like double skeins. I have almost all exclusively single skeins, so I don't have a lot of things where I've bought more than 1 skein of a fingering weight yarn, because I don't knit a lot of sweaters, and sweater quantities of yarn that I have already been slated for a particular sweater. So there were only a handful of yarns that I had 2 skeins to choose from, but I am bound and determined to make this shawl from stash and not purchase any more yarn for it. So I came up with some possibilities, and I want to kind of walk through, and I would love to hear in the comments below if any of them you love, any of them you hate. I'm not 100% sure which way I'm leaning. I have some thoughts which maybe I'll talk about as I go along. So I'm just going to pull these out of the bin in the order that I have them. So the first sets of the double skeins are this Treehouse Knits in Underworld from Lauren's Cocoa collection. It's a color I'm using right now in one of my whips. And then I was pairing that up with this Lola Bean yarn in a very, very pale gray called Forgiveness. So that would be the 2 sort of contrasting colors. And let's see how I can do this. Okay, so that. Then the options that I kind of pulled to possibly work with this, probably the most Stephen Westy of them would be this Porter Wool Company chartreuse. So that's probably the most like what you might see on a Westknits kit. The other one that I thought was kind of interesting, because the Underworld does to me have a little bit of like purple undertones, and this is, I think, a Chrome and Psyche colorway that I got at her trunk show here in LA. So it's this one, the color's hard to see. It is sort of very close to the color of the Forgiven, a little more blue in the base, but then pops of purple, and there is a little bit of blue there in some of those dark speckles, but it definitely brings more purple to the party. And then the third one that I had for this potential, I see why Lauren had so much trouble showing these colors, is this color from I Am Fully Spun, and it's called When We Met. And this really brings sort of the blue to the fore with a little bit of green and some more kind of primary colors. So definitely kind of a different vibe than the other 2. So those are kind of 3 that I was thinking about for that grouping. So here. The other one, the 2 contrast colors, I have 2 of these skeins from Brujeria Lana, which is a dyer that I think I learned about from Caleb at Drowning in Yarn. She does very, very limited production, and it's like happens, she'll sort of announce it, and there'll be, a handful of skeins of various colors, and you kind of have to grab them in the moment. This lighting is not so great. So it's a dark olivey kind of gray taupey color. It's really hard to describe. There's definitely olive in it, and gray and sort of brown. And then this is from Thought to Thread, and it's not called Novel Pages, and it is just a very sort of off-white, pale off-white, probably more to the gray side than to the cream side. So this is going to be a more kind of moody, neutrally palette. So you know what I'll do is I'll just hold one of each of the contrasts, and then you can see. So these are the two contrasts. And some of the thoughts I had was just to go super moody. I have this incredibly dark green from Les Garçons that was part of their Golden Compass, or his Dark Materials Club last year. So it's a very, very dark, like blacky green. So it would be very, very moody. Another idea was, I think this is maybe also Chrome and Psyche, is to have the color pop be within the yarn. So the base of this yarn is not too different from the Brujeria and Alana, a little more on the gray side than on the brown side. But then it has just every color of the rainbow in within the yarn. So I thought that might be an interesting way to play it. The other option, this is a Yarnaceous fiber, so Maggie Yarnaceous Fibers, pink, but definitely has that dark olivey color here in the speckles to pull out that, and then the base is more in that same sort of creamy gray color. So I thought that looked pretty. Sorry, I'm learning how to do this YouTube thing with showing things. Similar, but a little more colorful, would be this Hedgehog Fibers. The base is very close to the Thought to Thread, the novel papers, but it has some corals and blues and yellows and neon pops and things like that. So I thought that would be kind of a different way. And then the last one was, again, sort of more in the neutral camp, was to do this sort of pale, again from Yarnaceous. This is a color called Beak. And just do another sort of neutrally kind of pale color. So those are the options that I had for that one. And then finally, I had pulled out, because I wanted to play from stash, I actually had to break apart some of what I call kits to find two skeins of yarn that match together. So it was a kit, it was a kit I had put together that probably not going to work on anytime soon, and maybe never. So that was this Hawthorne from Knit Picks, and the colorway is, I don't know, Goddess Kettle Dye. Sorry, yeah, I think it's called Goddess. Tonal purple, and pairing that up for this contrast with this Lola Bean in A Mother's Love. And I think those look fantastic together. And then, because in the Lola Bean, you'll see it has a fair amount of green, and it does go from, there you go, olive to a brighter green. So the two things I thought about were to do olive. So this is Remain Calm, also from Lola Bean. So kind of go with the olive end of the green speckles from the Mother's Love. Or I had this from Jake at Ken Yarns, his Broadway collection. This is Feed Me Seymour, and that picks up more of the bright Kelly green that's in there. And for some reason, I kind of love that. I don't know. It's really bright and totally different vibe than the last sort of possible pairings. But I don't know. I think that's kind of fun. My concern about the purple is that I will be working on the Sweet Shadow wrap, and that is going to give me a shawl that has a fair amount of purple in it. So I would be working on two purple-based shawls at the same time, which kind of makes me lean towards doing one of these other, either the blue and silver one with more of a color pop, or the really neutrally that olive, this pairing with something in there. So let me know what your thoughts are. I probably will be narrowing these things down before my next episode, which is going to be probably launch. Well, I'll probably film it right before we leave on vacation, but it'll probably go up while we're on vacation. I'll just publish it while we're en route. So if you have any thoughts, let me know, and I'd love to hear them and see what you're thinking. And if you have your kits that you've put together, I'd love to hear what you're working on. If you're buying one of the ones from Stephen and Penelope, or if you're diving into Stash as well to work on your make-along. So I'm really excited. Last year was my first one. I had a ball doing it. I do not need to be making another shawl with all the things I have going on, but I'm still going to do it, and I may not finish it on time, but as he says, I'm going to embrace my pace and just do what I can and continue my other projects as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. In terms of my own knitting in the last couple weeks, there have been 0 FOs, but I did take, if you watched the last episode, my Not Too Tart hat by Fatima Hines at Disturbing the Fleece. I did take that to my friend who is recovering from brain cancer and wanted me to make her a couple of hats because she's lost some of her hair from radiation, and she absolutely loved it. So she loved the yarn, she loved the pattern, it fit her well. I went ahead and took her measurements just to be sure, but I have already started on a second hat for her. It's the Swirl Hat by Sheepy Time Knits, and I do not have it with me here in the room, so I'm going to pop and go get it, and here it is. So this is the Swirl Hat by Sheepy Time Knits. I am knitting it up in the Wandering Flocks Merino Singles base, which is really, really, really soft. This is not a color that my friend picked out. I'd been thinking about using a Treehouse knits that I showed last time, and I still may do that to make a little heavier hat for when things cool down here. But I didn't think it would look great in this swirl pattern. I've tried it before for a baby hat in a really variegated pattern, and you just lose the swirl effect. So I picked out this yarn just because it's so soft, and I think it'll be great for her. So it looks really small, but this pattern does have a fair amount of stretch because it's basically ribs all the way around, and she liked it a little snug on her head. So I'm hoping that with some blocking, this is going to be a nice little tight fit for her and keep her feeling good. I love this pattern. Like I said, I've made it several times for baby gifts, and this yarn is fantastic. So Geraldine, congratulations! You have wonderful yarn, which we already knew because we used it for the very first knit along and crochet along, or the very first knit along last year. So that is one of the FOs. The other one that I am frantically working on, which I did show last time, but I've made considerable progress on it, and it's living in my Bearded Pearls Harris Tweed bag. This is the Ellie Rue shawl that was the June Crochet Along, and it is being made in Porter Wool Company's Rainbow Dust kit that Caitlin designed for the Pride Crochet Along this past year, but because I did not follow directions particularly well and decided I wanted to alternate colors every other row, I quickly ran out of the main color, and so I was needing to get some replacement. That finally came to me in the mail, and so I've gotten started again on this. As I mentioned, our final show that we're going to get to see at the Hollywood Bowl this year is Duran Duran, and I'm hoping that in the next 2 weeks this heat wave passes and we get back to more temperate evening temperatures, and I can get this finished and throw a white shirt and white jeans on and wear this to the Duran concert at the Hollywood Bowl. If not, it will be available next summer on a cooler night. But I absolutely love both the yarn and the pattern. The designer is Shelby Shea's Stitches, and it's just really fun. Lots of cool techniques, and it's a 9 pattern repeat, so you really start to get the hang of it. Again, with my crochet, it's always me freaking out about not having the right stitch counts, but so far I've done okay and only had to fudge things a couple places in here. I'm using my Furls crochet hook. Thank you, Furls. They were a prize donor for last year's Crochet Along. So very, very happy with the Ellie Rue shawl and how that is coming along. And hopefully when next we meet, that will be finished and I will have had a chance to wear it out and about. The only other thing that I'm working on, except for that monster blanket that I did not bring in to show today because it's just too big to haul around. Maybe I'll take a picture and post it later, is my Pure Joy from Joji Locatelli. I have made some more progress, although it's a little hard to see because the cables are not long enough to really stretch it out. But I am into about halfway through the 4th wedge, 4 of 6. So I will have one more of these wedges in the variegated, which is Marigold Bridge from Treehouse Knits, part of her Cocoa collection. The eyelet rows are being done in Underworld, which is the same blue that I had for one of my potential MKALs, but I'm doing it in her slubby base, which has been really fun to work with. I'd never really worked with a slubby yarn before. And then, if you know the pattern, after I finish the 5th wedge in the variegated, the 6th and final and largest wedge will be done in this with the eyelet row done in the variegated. So I really feel like this is going to get done here in the next not too distant future, hoping to be able to take this with me on vacation, not as a work in progress, but as an actual accessory, because we're going to be spending some time in the mountains, and I think it will be a little chilly in the evenings, and so I think it would be nice to have a small kind of light scarf to take with me. So I'm excited about that. So that is Pure Joy by Joji Locatelli, living in my beautiful sister's bag, which I absolutely love, and a pen from a fellow AIDS Lifecyclist who made pins and stickers last year for part of his fundraising. And I'm hoping to do something similar this year. I'm working with a graphic designer, and I'm hoping to have some fun things to make it up into stickers and pens and stitch markers and things like that. So stay tuned for that opportunity to help me in my fundraising in a different way. So that's it in terms of the whips and the FOs for this week. I thought I would dip a little bit into the mailbag and talk a little about the giveaways. I already mentioned how you can enter the giveaways for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. The prizes I put into 2 buckets. So the first are what I call heart mail, which are donations that makers and dyers and bag makers and whoever have sent to me to be included in the giveaways. And then I have what I call booty stash enhancements, which are things that I've picked up along the way from my favorite dyers when they have a sale, or just something that I come across that I think would be a fun prize. And so I add it to the prize bucket, and it gets mixed into the mix as we go through. Before my trip, I want to do the lineup of prizes for the giveaways for this first Knitalong and Crochetalong, but I haven't quite done that yet. But I did want to recognize some folks who had sent in donations already. I really, really appreciate it. It just makes things a lot easier for me when I can get things in, and I love to share people who have sent me things as well. So this first one, and I don't have the go-ahead to mention a name here, so I'm not going to do that, but one of the participants in the Knitalong and Crochetalong last year and someone who follows me on Instagram asked if they could send some yarn, and so they did. So we have some really cool stuff from Ken Yarn and Lady Dye and Knit and Bro and Haynes House. So lots of fun, just individual skeins that I'm going to put into the mix, and those will be prizes at some point throughout the year. And then, as she did last year, Monica from Up North Yarns sent me 2 skeins of her Pride colorway on her 8515 merino nylon base. It is super, super soft. And I think I'll save this for the Pride knit along in June, just because thematically it makes a lot of sense. But she sent 2 skeins last year and was so sweet. And when I said I was announcing season 2, wanted to send some more yarn. So Monica, thank you very, very much. And one of these days we have to figure out a way to have you be one of the dyers for one of the Knitalongs, Crochetalongs. So Up North Yarns, there you go. And she is Etsy shop, and this is her Pride colorway, which is just all the rainbow colored speckles. And then for other acquisitions, I don't have anything to show prize related, although I do have some stuff coming in the mail because there were some really great sales that I found this last week or so. But as I organize the giveaways, I will go through them and show them to you so that you know what's coming up and get excited about that. As I mentioned at the top, I kind of view this podcast, in addition to the stuff that I'm doing with AIDS Lifecycle, as a platform to highlight other people in the greater fiber community who are doing good things in the community for their own communities, for the industry, and just to generally make the world a little bit of a better place. Given some of the things that have gone on in this industry over the past few years, I think it's nice to highlight some of the really good things that are going on as well. So I did want to mention 3 things, but before I did, I just forgot. Here's another heart mail. Ross from Twisted Ambitions, and this actually leads into my first thing. Ross, in one of my orders for, I think it was from my Sedona or Caribbean yarn, threw in an extra skein for me to give away as one of the giveaways. So this will definitely be in this season's knit along as one of the prizes. This is his Sweet Singles base, and the colorway is Tidal Wave. But it's a great segue into the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of someone that's doing great things in this business, and that is Ross at Twisted Ambitions Yarn. In addition to donating to AIDS Lifecycle with every kit sale that he makes for the knit along this season, as I mentioned before, he just wrapped up a fundraiser for his rainbow graffiti colorway, which was going to the Trevor Project, and he just announced this morning that he is raising money for the food bank of Eastern Oklahoma. So food insecurity in Oklahoma is about 16% of the population, which is 2 times the national average. Any food insecurity in this country is unacceptable, in my view. We're the richest nation in the world. And so Ross is trying to help this organization, which really focuses on some of the rural communities in Eastern Oklahoma. So for the month of September, $3 of each skein of his semi-solid collection is going to be donated to the food bank of Eastern Oklahoma. There's a link below right to his semi-solid collection. If you are participating in the Stephen West Knitalong, this would be a great source of your yarn. He has many, I don't even know, it feels like there's probably 20 or more colors in that collection, from brights to neutrals, everything in between. So if you're looking to either fill in a palette that you've picked out from your stash, or if you wanted to put a kit together from Ross's yarn, that would be a great place to start. He also has some fabulous speckles. So if you wanted to throw one of those in as your color pop color, I think that would be great. So please go check out Ross at Twisted Ambitions Yarn and what he's doing this month for the Food Bank of Eastern Oklahoma. And the other one that I wanted to mention is, I got a DM on Instagram from a woman named Courtney who had done in the past, was from California and had done the AIDS Lifecycle in the past. And she is now living in Minnesota and has become a indie yarn dyer, and said she wanted to see if she could help out with one of the Knitalongs and the Crochetalongs, either through giveaways or some way. And I said, absolutely. And so I went to her website just to see what her yarn was. And on the front page of her website, I saw a fundraiser that she is doing called Bands Off Our Body. And it is raising money for abortion providers in Minnesota. So if these draconian laws begin to be rolled out even more than they already are, Minnesota is going to be one of the few places in the Midwest where access to abortion is going to still be available. And so the providers in Minnesota are probably going to have their hands more than full with folks coming across state lines to try to access that health care. So she is selling her Bands Off Our Body colorway, Bands Off Our Bodies colorway, and $5 of each skein of this yarn is going to go to abortion providers in Minnesota. So here is the colorway. So the picture is interesting. The picture of the colorway is not. I think she had not settled on a colorway when she first launched this, and she hasn't updated the website with the color. But I ordered 2 skeins of it, and this is on her cashmere DK, which is super, super soft. But it is really, really pretty. So sort of a rosy pink with green speckles in the lighter areas. Just really, really gorgeous colorway. So she has it on multiple bases. Again, it's called Bands Off Our Bodies. It is Silly Goose Yarns is her company, and is named after her late dog, who I guess was dubbed a silly goose by her partner. And go check out her website and buy all of this yarn you can. There are multiple bases, I think, all the way from lace weight all the way up to at least worsted. And again, $5 of every skein goes to providers of abortion services in Minnesota. Silly Goose Yarns. Check her out. The last one that I wanted to mention, I heard about from Laverne at Busy Peach, and then I went and listened to a podcast on the Make Good podcast with the founders of this organization, or with this group, which is a very grassroots group. It's called Warm the Line, and it's at Warm the Line on Instagram. It was started by 2 women during the 2020 general election. And they realized rightly that in addition to gerrymandering and other nefarious plots, that the Republicans were basically going to try to make it as hard as possible for folks to vote, especially in battleground states, especially for Black and brown people. And they were going to close down polling stations, which they did do, which then created huge lines on election day, often in very inclement weather. And so they realized that one of the things that was going to keep people from going out to vote or from staying in those lines was the temperature and being cold. And so they organized to have folks knit up warm weather or cold weather items, so hats and gloves and mittens, scarves, and then they put together a network of people in some of these key states, especially ones with cold weather, to distribute those items to voters so that they could continue to stand in line to get their votes cast and have their voices heard in the general election. They followed that up with doing the same thing for the Georgia runoffs for the Senate races that happened after the election, and were able to distribute things to those polling locations in Georgia as well. So they're doing it again for the midterms. Things have gotten even worse, and so it's even a bigger going to be a bigger challenge for people to vote, because these voter suppression tactics are not going to go away until we change state legislatures, which is where all of this happens. And one of the reasons why it is very important to vote in midterms and not just the general, because the state, not just the general of every 4-year presidential election, because the state legislatures make the rules that govern elections in their individual states. And in these battleground states where the Republicans continue to control the state legislatures, they're going to make it as difficult as they possibly can for people to vote and to have their voices heard. And they're going to make it even more difficult for people in marginalized communities, because they know that if the maximum number of people, if everybody votes, that they are likely to not be in power anymore. So Warm the Lines Warm the Line is the name of the organization. There's a link below to all the documents in their link tree, which includes how to just get these handmade items to various states and the distributors in those states who are going to then provide them to the people in line. Ann and Kathy are the two founders. Several dyers and local yarn stores are the sort of distribution points for these hats and gloves and mittens and scarves in the various states. So if you have some already made up, because I know a lot of people make hats and scarves to donate, this would be a great place to send them. I know there are plenty of other organizations that collect those items as we head into the winter, but I think this is a very important cause right now. It's no exaggeration to say that this is probably one of the most important elections of our lives. We literally have democracy on the ballot, and so I think that anything that we can do as crafters to help to ensure that the maximum number of people vote and get their voices heard, it's important. So again, Walk the Line, link down below. If you're a hat knitter, and you can crank out a few hats between now and probably the end of October is when you need to have them in the mail. Definitely do that. So if you have any other groups or organizations that you think it would be worth highlighting or spotlighting here on the podcast, please shoot me a comment or a DM on Instagram. I'd love to check them out and try to help get the word out as best I can. With that, I would say I will see you all on Cast On Day. I won't be doing a YouTube, but I will be doing an Instagram live on Cast On Day, just to get everyone fired up about the Knitalongs and the Crochetalongs. Again, get your yarn, get your patterns sooner rather than later, and I really hope to see a lot of you making your hats and cowls and crocheting your shawls for the Knitalong and Crochet Along. Please have any comments down below. I'd love to hear them. Appreciate your time. Thanks. Have a great day.